They didn't just fire her, they made it a spectacle. After 7 years of silent excellence, Nurse Anna L. Crook was escorted out of Harbor Ridge Medical Center for defying protocol. Humiliated, erased, and clutching a cardboard box in the autumn drizzle, Anna thought she'd finally escaped her past. She was wrong. 2 Black Hawk helicopters weren't just tearing through the downtown airspace. They were hunting for her. The downdraft sent her box tumbling into the gutter, but the words roared by the 4-star general shattered everything she'd built. We don't need the surgeon. We need the ghost. This is the story of how one woman went from unemployed to commanding a life-or-death mission in less than 60 seconds. The administrative conference room on the 3rd floor of Harbor Ridge Medical Center smelled like lemon furniture polish and institutional cruelty. Anna L. Crook sat perfectly still in a chair designed to make people feel small, her spine straight out of muscle memory she couldn't quite kill. These were hands that had performed emergency tracheotomies in sandstorms, hands that had carried wounded soldiers across minefields, hands that still woke up at 0400 hours reaching for gear that wasn't there anymore. But right now, facing the self-satisfied smirk of Dr. Benjamin Benny Reichert and the clinical detachment of HR Director Patricia Valdez, those hands were folded neatly in her lap, like she'd been taught in some other lifetime. Reckless endangerment of hospital protocol, Patricia announced, her voice flat as a eulogy she'd given 100 times before. She didn't look at Anna. She looked at the printed incident report as if Anna had already ceased to exist. Unauthorized medical intervention, bypassing the attending physician's direct orders. The violations are clear, Miss Crook. Anna's jaw tightened. The patient was coding. Dr. Reichert was still reviewing the chart. The patient, Dr. Benny cut in, leaning back in his chair with the casual authority of someone who'd never had to justify himself, was under my care. You performed a battlefield shunt procedure not even approved for use in civilian hospitals without consultation, without authorization, and frankly, without the credentials to make that call. He adjusted the gold pen clipped to his pristine white coat. You're a nurse, Anna. A very experienced nurse, perhaps, but you are not a surgeon. You don't make executive medical decisions. You assist. You follow orders. I saved his life, Anna said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of 1,000 arguments she'd never been allowed to finish. You got lucky, Benny snapped, his composure cracking just enough to reveal the insecurity underneath. And you made me look incompetent in front of my entire team. That's the real issue here, isn't it? You think because you wore a uniform once upon a time, you're better than the rest of us who actually went to medical school. Patricia raised a hand, silencing him. The decision has been made. Anna, Dr. Reichert has formally requested your immediate termination. Your access badges are being deactivated as we speak. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. The silence that followed felt like the moment before an IED detonates. Anna looked at Benny. He met her gaze with barely concealed triumph, the expression of a man who'd spent his entire career eliminating anyone who made him feel inadequate. He didn't know. He had no idea who she really was, and that had been exactly the point of the last 7 years. You're making a mistake, Anna said, standing slowly, her movements controlled. The only mistake, Benny replied, rising to mirror her, was thinking you could hide whatever you were running from forever. The walk through the hospital corridors was a death march. 7 years. She'd started at Harbor Ridge the week after her discharge, desperate for anonymity, for routine, for anything that didn't involve triage under mortar fire. She deliberately stayed under the radar, never volunteered for leadership, never challenged the doctors, never let anyone see the tattoos that wound up her forearms beneath the long sleeves she wore, even in summer. She knew the names of every custodian, every intake clerk, the security guard Ramon who always saved her the good coffee. And now they all watched her pass with a mixture of pity and relief that it wasn't them. I'm real sorry about this, Anna, Ramon muttered as he stood watch while she emptied her locker. His eyes were on the floor. Not your fault, Ramon, she replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands as she placed items into the small cardboard box. A stethoscope with her initials worn off from use, a faded photo of her old unit, a travel mug that said, "Dedicated to excellence," a keychain from Kandahar she'd never been able to throw away. 7 years reduced to objects that barely filled the bottom of a box. "You watch that glucose, okay," she added, trying to smile. "And tell Maria in radiology her daughter's rash was probably just contact dermatitis. Lavender soap." Ramon nodded, not trusting himself to speak. She walked through the ER one final time. The nurses, Sophia, James, Caroline, stood frozen at their stations. They knew. They all knew what Benny had done. But speaking up meant becoming his next target, and they had families, mortgages, survival to consider. The hospital wasn't a place of healing anymore. It was a hierarchy, and the king had just made an example of someone who'd forgotten her place. The automatic doors of the emergency entrance parted with a hydraulic sigh. The October air hit her like a slap, cold and sharp. It was drizzling. The sky was the color of old concrete. Anna stood on the sidewalk, rain spotting her faded blue scrubs, the cardboard box already growing soft against her chest. Her car was still in impound from an unpaid parking ticket she'd been too proud to ask anyone's help with. She'd have to walk the 12 blocks to the bus station. She took the first step. Her sneakers made a wet sound on the pavement. She was unemployed. She was anonymous again. And for the first time in 7 years, she had absolutely nowhere she needed to be. That's when she heard it. A sound that didn't belong in a city. A sound that made her spine snap straight and her head snap up before her conscious mind could process why. Thwap, 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 thwap. The bass-heavy percussion of rotor blades. Close. Too close. People on the sidewalk were stopping, pointing at the sky. Car alarms started shrieking. The sound grew from a distant rumble to an earth-shaking roar. Anna's box slipped from her hands, spilling into a puddle as her training took over. She scanned the roof lines, calculated the approach vector, identified the sound signature in half a heartbeat. 2 Black Hawk helicopters dropped from the cloud cover like predators descending on prey. They weren't passing over. They were landing. Right here, right now, in the middle of a downtown intersection. The downdraft turned the drizzle into horizontal needles. Anna's hair tore loose from its bun. People screamed and scattered. Cars screeched to a halt, and the helicopters touched down on the rain-slicked asphalt with perfect, terrifying precision. 40 feet from where Anna stood frozen. Before the skids even settled, the side doors flew open. Operators in full tactical gear fast-roped to the ground, their boots hitting pavement in synchronized chaos. They formed a perimeter, rifles up, blocking traffic, waving back civilians with the kind of authority that didn't ask permission. And then, from the lead helicopter, a figure emerged. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a Class A dress uniform that seemed to repel the rain itself. 4 stars gleamed on his shoulder boards. His jaw was scarred, his hair iron gray, and his eyes swept the street with the focus of a man who'd seen 1,000 battlefields and never flinched at any of them. Those eyes locked on Anna. "Crook!" His voice cut through the rotor noise like a blade. "Captain Anna L. Crook." The world seemed to stop. Anna stood there, soaked, holding nothing, her past and present colliding in the space of a heartbeat. The general strode toward her, his boots splashing through puddles, his uniform immaculate despite the chaos. He stopped 3 feet away, and his expression was granite. "Captain," he said, and this time it was quieter, urgent, almost pleading. "We don't have time for the paperwork. The president's son is down in the Karazi sector, and you're the only medic who's ever survived that hellhole. I need the ghost of the Frontline. I need you, right now." Behind him, through the hospital windows, Anna could see faces pressed to the glass. Staff, patients, and there, on the 3rd floor, Dr. Benny Reichert, his mouth hanging open in shock. Anna L. Crook stood in the rain. 7 years of hiding evaporating in an instant. Her posture shifted, her shoulders squared, Her chin lifted. The 1,000-yard stare returned to her eyes, the look of someone who'd walked through fire and come out forged in it. "Sir," she said, her voice steady as steel. "What's the situation?" The general almost smiled. "That's my medic. Subscribe to see how this unfolds and comment where you're watching from. I'd love to say hello to you just to know how far our story is going." The call came in at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday that felt like every other Tuesday in the 7 years Anna L. Crook had worked the graveyard shift at Harbor Ridge Medical Center. The ambulance bay doors crashed open, and the paramedics rushed in with a gurney carrying a teenage boy whose lips were already turning blue. 17-year-old male, anaphylactic shock, unresponsive to initial epinephrine dose. The lead paramedic shouted, his face slick with sweat despite the October chill. "We're losing him." Anna was already moving before the words finished leaving his mouth. Her hands went to the boy's neck, feeling for a pulse that was there but fading, irregular, desperate. His airway was closing. She could see it in the way his chest heaved without bringing in air, in the panic white of his sclera, in the way his fingers clawed at nothing. "Get me a crash cart," Anna said, her voice calm in the way that only comes from having done this 1,000 times before, in places where a crash cart was a luxury you didn't have. And Paige, the attending, Nurse Sophia Martinez, was already wheeling the cart over, her eyes wide. "Dr. Reichert is on call, but he's upstairs with the hospital administrator." "I know." Anna's hands were already prepping the boy's arm for an IV line. His veins were collapsing, retreating from the histamine flood that was killing him from the inside out. She found one, threaded the catheter with the precision of someone who'd done this in the dark, in moving vehicles, in places where one mistake meant someone's son didn't come home. The monitors were screaming. His oxygen saturation was dropping into the 70s. His heart rate was becoming erratic. Anna looked at the crash cart, at the medication drawer, at the boy dying in front of her. She knew what he needed. She also knew that administering it without the attending physician's direct order would violate every protocol in the book that Dr. Benjamin Reichert used, like a weapon against anyone who threatened his authority. The boy's mother burst through the doors, her face a mask of terror. "Please," she sobbed. "Please. That's my son. That's my baby." Anna made her decision in the space between heartbeats. "Sophia, document that I'm administering emergency epinephrine, 0.5 milligrams, and preparing for possible cricothyrotomy if the airway doesn't open." Her hands moved with the muscle memory of a different life. She pushed the medication, her eyes on the monitor, counting seconds. "Anna, Dr. Reichert's going to..." Sophia started. "Document it," Anna repeated, her voice harder now. "And hand me the intubation kit. If this doesn't work in the next 90 seconds, I'm cutting." It worked in 60. The boy's chest expanded. His color shifted from death blue to living pink. His eyes fluttered open, confused and terrified but breathing. The monitors calmed. His mother collapsed against the wall, crying. Anna stood back, her hands steady, her expression neutral. "Get him stabilized and into observation. Monitor him every 15 minutes. I want labs drawn in an hour." That's when Dr. Benny Reichert walked in, his white coat pressed so crisp it could cut glass, his hair perfectly styled despite the hour. He took one look at the boy, at the chart Sophia was updating, at Anna standing there with the empty epinephrine syringe still in her hand. "What happened?" he demanded. Sophia opened her mouth, but Benny wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the boy's mother, at the hospital administrator who'd followed him down, at the opportunity presenting itself like a gift. "We had a severe anaphylactic emergency," Benny said, moving to the boy's side, his voice taking on the performative authority he used during grand rounds. "Critical airway compromise. I authorized immediate intervention." He glanced at the chart, at Anna's handwriting. "Good work, Nurse Crook. Quick thinking to call me when you did." Anna said nothing. She'd learned a long time ago that some battles weren't worth fighting, especially when the enemy controlled the terrain. She'd saved the boy's life. That was what mattered. That was all that ever mattered. The hospital administrator, A thin man named Caldwell, who wore suits that cost more than Anna made in a month, nodded approvingly at Benny. "Excellent response time, Doctor. This is exactly the kind of decisive action that reflects well on our trauma program." Benny smiled, the smile of a man who'd been collecting unearned credit his entire life. "Just doing my job." The boy's mother grabbed Benny's hand. "Thank you. Thank you so much. You saved my son." "All in a day's work, ma'am." Benny patted her hand, then turned to Anna. "Nurse Crook, make sure the boy's transferred to the ICU and all the post-exposure protocols are followed. I'll handle the family." Anna nodded once, mechanical, and turned away. She could feel Sophia's eyes on her, the unspoken apology, the recognition of the theft that had just occurred. But Sophia had 3 kids and a mortgage. She couldn't afford to speak up any more than Anna could afford to make waves. Anna stripped off her gloves and walked to the staff bathroom. She stood at the sink, her hands braced on the cold porcelain, and looked at her reflection in the fluorescent-lit mirror. The woman staring back at her was tired, older than her 39 years, hair pulled back so tight it gave her headaches, eyes that had seen too much and tried too hard to forget. Under her rolled-up sleeves, she'd had to roll them to work. The tattoos were visible, the unit insignia on her left forearm, the coordinates on her right, the words she'd had inked after her 3rd deployment, "So others may live." She pulled the sleeves back down, covering them, burying them under the blue fabric of institutional anonymity. She'd left that life behind. She'd chosen to leave it behind, and she'd built a new one here, quiet and small and safe, even if it meant swallowing her pride every single time someone like Benny Reichert took credit for her work. 3 days later, during a daytime shift that Anna had picked up to cover for a colleague, the theft became a pattern. A 52-year-old woman came in with chest pain. Dr. Reichert ordered a standard cardiac workup and a dose of nitroglycerin. Anna reviewed the woman's chart while prepping the medication. She saw the detail Benny had missed. The patient had taken erectile dysfunction medication 18 hours prior. Nitroglycerin and PDE5 inhibitors together could drop blood pressure to lethal levels. Anna found Benny at the nurse's station, charming a pharmaceutical rep who'd brought lunch for the staff. "Dr. Reichert," Anna said quietly. "Mrs. Patterson in Bay 3. "Can wait," Benny said without looking at her. "I'm in the middle of something." "She can't, actually. You ordered nitro, but her chart shows..." "I ordered nitro because she's presenting with angina, Nurse Crook." Benny turned to her, his smile tight and condescending. "I'm aware you have opinions about clinical decisions, but unless you've obtained a medical degree I'm not aware of, I'd appreciate you preparing the medication I prescribed." "She took Viagra yesterday," Anna said, her voice level. "Her husband confirmed it during intake. Nitro will kill her." The pharmaceutical rep's eyes widened. The other nurses at the station went silent, their conversations dying mid-sentence. Benny's face flushed. "Excuse me, the interaction is contraindicated. It's in her chart." Anna held out the tablet, showing him the intake notes. "We need to revise the treatment plan." For a moment, something flickered in Benny's eyes, recognition, perhaps, that he'd made a mistake, that he'd been caught. But instead of gratitude or acknowledgement, what surfaced was rage, pure, crystalline rage at being corrected, at being made to look fallible, at being challenged by someone he considered beneath him. "Step into my office," Benny said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Now." Anna glanced at the other nurses. Sophia was shaking her head in warning. James was looking at the floor. Caroline was mouthing the word "don't." But Mrs. Patterson was in Bay 3, and someone needed to stop the medication order before a well-meaning resident carried it out. "After we address Mrs. Patterson," Anna said. "Now," Benny roared, loud enough that patients in nearby bays could hear it. His composure shattered like glass. "You do not contradict me in front of staff. You do not question my orders. You do not undermine my authority. Do you understand me?" "Nurse Crook." Anna stood her ground. "I understand that Mrs. Patterson will die if someone gives her nitro. That's what I understand." Benny's jaw clenched. He snatched the tablet from Anna's hands, scrolled through the notes, and his face went from red to pale. He'd missed it. He'd genuinely missed it. And now, everyone knew. Dr. Reichert, Sophia ventured carefully. Should I hold the medication order and— Obviously, Benny snapped. Revise to aspirin and continuous monitoring. And you, he turned back to Anna. My office. 5 minutes. Don't make me call security. The office was small, windowless, decorated with Benny's diplomas and a photo of him shaking hands with a senator. Anna stood in front of his desk while he paced behind it, his hands clasped behind his back like a general addressing an insubordinate soldier. The irony wasn't lost on her. You think you're special, Benny said finally. You think because you're good at your job, because you're quick and efficient and the patients like you, that you're somehow my equal. But you're not. You're a nurse. You will always be a nurse. And nurses do not embarrass physicians in front of drug reps and support staff. I wasn't trying to embarrass you, Anna said. I was trying to save a patient by making me look incompetent. You made yourself look incompetent when you didn't read the full intake notes. The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Benny stopped pacing. He turned to face her, and his expression was cold, calculated. You're fired. Anna blinked. What? You're fired. Effective immediately. For insubordination. For creating a hostile work environment. For undermining the medical hierarchy that keeps this hospital functioning. He picked up his phone. Patricia, it's Dr. Reichert. I need you to process a termination. Yes, right now. Nurse Anna Crook. I'll send the documentation within the hour. You're firing me for stopping you from killing a patient, Anna said slowly, as if testing the words to see if they made sense in any configuration. I'm firing you for violating the chain of command, for making unilateral clinical judgments outside your scope of practice, for being unable to accept your role in the healthcare team. He set the phone down. Security will escort you out. I want your badge, your access cards, and your stethoscope. Hospital property. Anna stood there, the words washing over her like cold water. 7 years. 7 years of silence, of keeping her head down, of trying to build something normal. And it had taken Benny Reichert exactly 3 minutes to dismantle it because she'd had the audacity to save a life he'd almost taken. Take off the stethoscope, Benny said. Now. Anna's hands moved automatically, lifting the instrument from around her neck. It was a cheap one, not like the military-grade equipment she'd used overseas, but it had served her well. She set it on his desk. Badge. She unclipped it from her scrubs. Anna L. Crook, RN. 7 years of identity, reduced to a piece of plastic. She placed it next to the stethoscope. There's a cardboard box outside with your name on it, Benny said. Security will escort you to your locker. You have 10 minutes to clear out. If you're not gone by then, I'll have you removed for trespassing. Anna looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time since she'd started working at Harbor Ridge, she let him see the person she used to be, the one who'd carried wounded soldiers through fire, the one who'd made impossible decisions in impossible situations, the one who'd learned that sometimes the worst enemies weren't the ones shooting at you. They were the ones who couldn't stand anyone being better than them at the only thing they had. You're making a mistake, she said quietly. The only mistake, Benny replied, was hiring someone who doesn't understand her place. The walk through the hospital was a blur. Ramon from security looked like he wanted to apologize but didn't know how. The box was waiting for her outside Benny's office, small and sad and empty. She filled it with the contents of her locker, the stethoscope she'd bought herself, the photo, the mug, the keychain. 20 minutes to pack up 7 years. The rain started as she pushed through the emergency entrance doors. Of course it did. The universe had a sense of drama, if nothing else. Anna stood on the sidewalk, the box growing damp in her arms, and tried to remember if she'd paid her bus fare card this month. Probably not. She'd have to walk 12 blocks. In the rain, carrying everything that remained of her civilian life in a cardboard box that was already starting to disintegrate. She took the first step, then the second. People passed her on the sidewalk, umbrellas up, faces buried in phones, oblivious to the woman whose world had just collapsed. The rain soaked through her scrubs, plastering them to her skin. Her sneakers squelched. Water dripped from her hair into her eyes. By the 4th block, she'd stopped noticing. By the 6th, she'd gone numb. By the 8th, she was operating on autopilot, the way she had after 72-hour shifts in the field, when your body kept moving because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant breaking. That's when the sound started. At first, it was distant, almost subliminal, a rhythmic thumping that could have been construction equipment or a garbage truck with a bad suspension. But something in Anna's hindbrain recognized it, the part that never really left the military, the part that still woke her at 0400 hours reaching for body armor that wasn't there. Thwop, 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 thwop. Her head snapped up. Other people on the street were slowing, looking around, confused by the sound that didn't belong in downtown Chicago on a rainy afternoon. Car alarms started going off, triggered by the vibration. Windows rattled in their frames. Anna's hands tightened on the box as her eyes scanned the sky. They came out of the low cloud cover like wrath itself. 2 UA-60 Black Hawk helicopters, painted in standard military gray, dropping altitude so fast that people on the sidewalk screamed. They weren't flying over. They weren't passing through. They were landing. Right here, in the middle of the intersection of Michigan Avenue and East Huron Street. The downdraft hit like a physical force. Anna's box flew from her hands, the contents scattering into the gutter. Her hair tore loose from what remained of her bun. Papers and trash swirled in miniature tornadoes. Car windshields cracked from the pressure differential, and the helicopters settled onto the rain-slicked asphalt with the kind of precision that spoke of pilots who'd landed in far worse conditions than this. People were running now, fleeing in panic, pulling out phones to record what they were sure was either a terrorist attack or the beginning of World War III. Traffic screeched to a halt. Somewhere, police sirens started wailing. But Anna stood perfectly still, her feet shoulder-width apart, her hands at her sides, her eyes tracking the movement of the aircraft with the automatic analysis of someone who'd spent years working around them. These weren't hostile. These were U.S. military, and they were here for a reason. The side doors of both helicopters slid open before the skids had fully settled. Operators in full tactical gear fast roped to the ground, their movements synchronized, efficient, practiced. They wore desert camouflage and carried M4 carbines at low ready. Within seconds, they'd established a perimeter, blocking traffic, waving back civilians, creating a security bubble in the middle of downtown Chicago. Anna counted 8 operators. Special forces, probably. Maybe Delta. Their patch configurations were deliberately vague. And then the command figure emerged from the lead helicopter. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with the kind of bearing that announced his rank before you saw the 4 stars on his shoulder boards. His Class A dress uniform was immaculate despite the rain. His ribbons a testament to a career spent in every hell the world had to offer. His hair was iron gray. His jaw was scarred from what looked like shrapnel, and his eyes were the color of winter storms, and just as unforgiving. Those eyes swept the street with tactical precision, dismissing civilians, ignoring the responding police cars that were screeching to a halt at the perimeter, searching for something specific, searching for someone. They found Anna. The general's gaze locked onto her with the intensity of a laser designator. He started walking, his boots splashing through puddles, his stride purposeful and unstoppable. The operators parted to let him through. A police sergeant tried to intercept him, shouting something about airspace violations and terrorist threats. The general didn't even look at him. He held up a hand, and one of the operators stepped smoothly between them, flashing credentials that made the sergeant's face go white. "Crook!" The general's voice cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. "Captain Anna L. Crook." The words hit Anna like a physical blow. That rank, that name, that identity she'd tried to bury for 7 years under blue scrubs and institutional anonymity, and the desperate hope that she could be normal, ordinary, forgettable. People were staring now. Not at the helicopters, at her, at the soaking wet nurse, standing in the rain like a ghost summoned by the speaking of her true name. The general stopped 3 feet away. Up close, she could see the details. The combat medical badge on his chest, the Special Operations Command patch, the Ranger tab. This wasn't some desk officer. This was a war fighter. And he knew exactly who she was. "Captain," he said, quieter now but no less intense. "I'm General Marcus Hale, SOCOM. We have a situation." Behind him, more official vehicles were arriving. City officials, federal agents in suits, men with earpieces and bureaucratic anxiety. They surrounded the scene like flies on something dead, all of them trying to figure out what the hell was happening and who was in charge. General Hale ignored all of them. His focus was absolute, locked on Anna like she was the only thing that mattered in the world. Which, apparently, she was. "Sir," Anna heard herself say, her voice steady despite the shock, despite the rain, despite everything. 7 years of civilian life fell away in an instant, and the soldier underneath remembered how to stand, how to speak, how to exist in this reality. "I'm not active duty." "You are now," Hale said. "As of 47 minutes ago, your emergency recall was activated under Title 10, Section 688. The President's son is down in the Karazi province. Hostile territory, no air superiority, medical facilities compromised. He took shrapnel to the femoral artery during an extraction op that went sideways. The medic on site stabilized him, but he needs a level 1 trauma specialist who knows that terrain, someone who's operated in that sector before, someone who's survived it." Anna's mind was racing, pulling up maps from memory, calculating distances, remembering the nightmare geography of Karazi province where she'd spent 14 months and lost 3 soldiers from her unit. "Sir, there are level 1 trauma surgeons at Walter Reed. They don't know the sector," Hale interrupted. "They haven't worked with the warlord who controls the region. They haven't negotiated passage through the mineral extraction zones. They don't know which village wells are poisoned and which compounds will fire on American helicopters just for showing up." His expression softened, just for a moment, just enough to show the desperate calculation underneath. "You do. You're the ghost of the Frontline, Captain Crook. You're the only medic who went into that hellhole 6 times and came back all 6 times. I need that person. Right now. Not the nurse. The ghost." A city official in a suit that was getting ruined by the rain pushed his way through the operator perimeter. "Now wait just a minute. You can't just land military aircraft in downtown Chicago without clearance. This is a civilian area. There are protocols." General Hale turned to him with the kind of look that had probably stopped armed insurgents in their tracks. "Sir, this is a matter of national security under direct orders from the National Command Authority. I have all the clearance I need. Now step back before my men move you back." The official opened his mouth, looked at the stone-faced operators, and wisely chose survival. Hale turned back to Anna. "Captain, I don't have time for the paperwork. I don't have time for the briefing. I don't even have time for you to change clothes. The President's son is bleeding out in a compound 12 miles from any functional hospital, surrounded by hostiles who know he's valuable, and the only person who can get him out alive is standing here in wet scrubs, arguing with me about protocol." He took a step closer. "I need the ghost. I need her now. Are you in, or not?" Anna stood there, rain streaming down her face, her past and present colliding in the space between heartbeats. Behind Hale, she could see the hospital in the distance, the building where she'd just been fired for being too good at her job. Where Dr. Benny Reichert was probably watching from a window, his mind unable to process what he was seeing. 7 years. 7 years of running from this. 7 years of trying to be small, to be quiet, to be anything other than what she'd been trained to be. And now a general was standing in front of her, asking her to be that person again. No, not asking, needing her to be that person. Because someone's son was dying, and she was the only one who could save him. Anna L. Crook, nurse, stood in the rain and felt herself dying. Captain Anna L. Crook, combat medic, ghost of the Frontline, straightened her spine and raised her chin. Her posture shifted from civilian casualness to military precision. Her shoulders went back, her eyes cleared, sharpening with focus that had been dulled by 7 years of hiding. "Sir," she said, her voice carrying the command authority she'd buried but never lost. "What's the extraction timeline?" General Hale's expression shifted. Relief, respect, recognition. "We have a 90-minute window before the compound is overrun. Wheels up in 2 minutes. Anna nodded once, sharp and decisive. "I'll need a full trauma kit, type O negative blood supply, and a tactical briefing en route." "And sir?" She looked past him at the hospital, at the window where she knew Benny was watching. "I'm going to need someone to retrieve my stethoscope. The real one. It's in Dr. Reichert's office." Hale almost smiled. "Consider it done." He turned to one of his operators. "Sergeant, you heard the captain. Get her kit." The operator nodded and jogged toward the hospital entrance, his credentials already out. Anna had no doubt he'd walk right into Benny's office and take whatever the hell he wanted, and there wasn't a damn thing Benny could do about it. She turned back to Hale. "Let's go save the president's son." "That's my medic," Hale said, and started walking toward the lead Black Hawk. Anna followed, her wet sneakers splashing through puddles, her scrubs clinging to her skin, her hair a mess. She looked like a disaster. She felt like she was coming home. The ghost of the Frontline was back. The interior of the Black Hawk was exactly as Anna remembered. Utilitarian, loud, smelling of hydraulic fluid and old canvas. She strapped into the jump seat across from General Hale, while the operators secured the doors. The engine pitch changed, and the helicopter lifted off with the stomach-dropping lurch that had once been as familiar to her as breathing. Through the window, she watched Harbor Ridge Medical Center fall away below them. She could see the tiny figures of people on the sidewalk, phones raised, recording this moment for social media feeds that would explode within the hour. She could see her scattered belongings in the gutter, the photo of her old unit, the mug with the stupid slogan, "The keychain from a war that never really ended." She could see the cardboard box lying on its side in a puddle, dissolving into pulp. 7 years of careful construction, gone, not destroyed, transcended. She'd built a life as Anna the nurse, quiet and small and safe. But that life had been a cocoon, and cocoons were always meant to be temporary. Hale handed her a tablet. Mission brief. The president's son, Lieutenant James Wolcott, was leading a training operation with Afghan coalition forces when their convoy hit an IED. The blast killed 2 of his men and sent shrapnel through his left leg. Field medic got a tourniquet on him, but he's been bleeding for 3 hours. They managed to get him to a warlord's compound, one of ours, theoretically, but the situation's deteriorating fast. Taliban forces know he's there. They're massing for an assault. Anna scrolled through the brief, her mind automatically cataloging the critical data. Blood type, injury specifics, terrain maps, compound layout. The coordinates made her stomach tighten. She knew that area. She'd lost a soldier there in 2018, a kid from Oklahoma named Martinez, who'd stepped on a pressure plate mine 20 feet from the extraction point. "The warlord is Hassan Ahmadi," she said, reading the name and feeling the memories surface. "He's a businessman first, ally second. If he thinks the Taliban are going to overrun his compound, he'll hand over the lieutenant to save his own skin." "That's the assessment," Hale confirmed, "which is why we need to get in and out fast. But here's the problem." He leaned forward, his expression grim. "The lieutenant's injury is beyond field stabilization. The femoral artery is damaged but not severed. The shrapnel's still in there, and it's acting like a partial plug. If we move him wrong, if we try to extract him in his current condition, he'll bleed out before we get him to Bagram." Anna understood immediately. "You need someone to perform surgical repair in the compound, under hostile conditions, with whatever supplies you manage to bring." "That's exactly what I need," Hale said. "But there's a complication. The extraction team can't get back to the compound. Taliban have moved in anti-aircraft positions. We'd be flying into a shooting gallery. So we're going to do something that's either brilliant or insane." He paused. We're taking you to the nearest functional surgical facility that has the equipment you need to practice the procedure first. Somewhere close. Somewhere with a level 1 trauma center. Anna's eyes narrowed. You're taking me back to Harbor Ridge. The hospital roof has a helipad rated for military aircraft. We can set down. You can run the procedure in a controlled environment to verify your muscle memory is intact, and then we extract you back out for the real thing. Hale's expression was unreadable. I know you just got fired from there. I know walking back in is going to be complicated, but we don't have time to fly you to a military facility. Harbor Ridge is 8 minutes away. That's what we've got. Anna felt something cold and sharp settle in her chest. Not fear, not anxiety, something closer to anticipation. Sir, I don't need to practice. I've done femoral repairs in moving vehicles. I've done them in the dark. I've done them while taking incoming fire. I believe you, Captain, but the President wants confirmation before we put his son's life in anyone's hands, even yours. You walk me through one successful repair. I call him personally, and we launch for Karazi. That's the deal. Hale's voice softened slightly. It's not about doubting your skills. It's about procedure, protocol, politics. Anna wanted to argue, but she understood. She'd spent 7 years drowning in protocol and politics. The irony of it saving lives now wasn't lost on her. Understood, sir, she said. Do we have a patient at Harbor Ridge who meets the criteria? We do now, Hale replied, and something in his tone made Anna look up sharply. 20 minutes ago, a motorcyclist was brought into your ER with a femoral artery injury from a crash, similar profile to Lieutenant Woolcott. The hospital's head of surgery is currently preparing to operate. Dr. Benny Reichert. Of course. He's not qualified for that procedure, Anna said flatly. He's a good surgeon for routine cases, but femoral repairs require— I know, Hale interrupted, which is why you're going to do it instead. The patient's family has already been informed that a military trauma specialist is being brought in. They've consented. The hospital administration has been informed. And Dr. Reichert, Hale's expression hardened, is about to learn what chain of command really means. The Black Hawk banked hard, and through the window, Anna saw Harbor Ridge Medical Center rising up to meet them. The rooftop helipad was clear, marked with a glowing red cross that looked like a target. Ground crew were already visible, pressed against the stairwell door, watching the incoming aircraft with expressions of shock and confusion. 2 minutes. The pilot called back. Anna's hands went automatically to check for gear she wasn't wearing. No body armor, no helmet, no sidearm, just wet scrubs and 7 years of buried muscle memory clawing its way back to the surface. Hale reached under his seat and pulled out a tactical vest. It's not perfect, but it'll help you look the part. Sometimes, appearance is half the authority. Anna took it, strapped it over her scrubs. It was heavy, reassuring, familiar. She could feel the transformation happening in real time, the civilian nurse peeling away like dead skin, revealing the combat medic underneath. Her breathing slowed, her focus sharpened. The noise of the helicopter faded into background static. Captain Crook, Hale said, and she looked up to meet his eyes. Welcome back to the fight. The Black Hawk touched down on the roof with barely a bump. The doors slid open, and Anna was moving before the skids fully settled, her boots hitting the rooftop with the confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. The downwash from the rotors was still strong, but she leaned into it, her body remembering the physics of helicopter operations. Behind the stairwell door, she could see faces pressed against the window. Hospital staff, maybe administrators, definitely people who'd watched her get fired 8 hours ago, and were now trying to process the cognitive dissonance of seeing her return in a military helicopter with a 4-star general. The door burst open, and Dr. Patricia Valdez from HR stepped onto the roof, her professional composure barely intact. Behind her was Hospital Administrator Caldwell, his expensive suit rumpled, his expression caught between outrage and panic. "What is the meaning of this?" Caldwell shouted over the helicopter noise. "You can't just— this is a hospital, not a military base. We have protocols." General Hale descended from the helicopter with the kind of presence that made protocols irrelevant. "Mr. Caldwell, I'm General Marcus Hale, Special Operations Command. Under Federal Emergency Authority, this facility has been temporarily designated as a critical military medical asset. Captain Crook is here to perform an emergency surgical procedure. You will provide full cooperation. Captain? Patricia's eyes went to Anna, widening with recognition and confusion. Anna, you were terminated this morning. You don't have privileges here. You're not even... She's not Anna, Hale interrupted, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. She's Captain Anna L. Crook, United States Army, decorated combat medic with a security clearance 3 levels above anyone in this building. And right now, she's the only person qualified to save the patient currently in your ER. Caldwell's face went through several colors in rapid succession. The motorcyclist. Dr. Reichert is already scrubbing in. He's our head of surgery. He's perfectly capable. Dr. Reichert, Hale said, his tone making it clear he'd already done his homework, has never performed a battlefield femoral artery repair under combat conditions. Captain Crook has performed 27 of them with a 96% survival rate. Now, you can either clear a path to your ER, or my operators can clear it for you. Your choice. You have 5 seconds. Caldwell looked at the 2 Special Forces operators who'd descended from the helicopter behind Anna. They weren't pointing weapons. They didn't need to. Their presence alone suggested that resistance would be inadvisable. This is highly irregular, Caldwell stammered. 4 seconds, Hale said. The board is going to hear about this. 3 seconds. Fine, Caldwell stepped aside, gesturing frantically at the stairwell. But I'm documenting every aspect of this for our legal... Document whatever you want, Hale said. Captain, you're clear to proceed. Anna moved past them without a word. Through the stairwell door and down the stairs she'd climbed hundreds of times over 7 years. But everything was different now. The vest added weight to her stride. The operators flanking her changed the dynamic. She wasn't Anna the nurse, scurrying through the hallways trying not to bother anyone. She was Captain Crook, and she had a mission. The ER came into view as she descended the final flight of stairs. Through the window in the door, she could see the organized chaos of a trauma response. Nurses moving with urgent purpose, the trauma bay lights on. And there, visible through the interior window, Dr. Benny Reichert in his surgical scrubs, mask dangling around his neck, giving orders to the team with the performative authority of someone who needed everyone to know he was in charge. Anna pushed through the door. The ER went silent in stages, like a wave moving through the room. The nurse nearest the door saw her first and froze. Then Sophia, who'd been prepping an IV, stopped mid-motion, her eyes going wide. Then James, then Caroline, then finally the patients in the waiting area, who couldn't understand why all the medical staff had suddenly stopped working to stare at the woman in wet scrubs and a tactical vest walking through the emergency department, like she owned it. Dr. Benny Reichert turned, probably to ask why everyone had stopped moving, and his face went through an expression Anna would treasure for the rest of her life. Confusion, recognition, disbelief, shock, and finally, something approaching fear. Anna, he said, his voice uncertain. What are you? You can't be here. You're terminated. Security. That's Captain Crook, General Hale said, entering behind her with the 2 operators. And she's here on federal authority to take over the femoral artery repair you're about to botch. Benny's face flushed red. Botch? I am the head of surgery at this facility. I've performed hundreds of routine procedures, Anna interrupted, her voice calm and clinical. You've never done a battlefield shunt under hostile conditions. You've never repaired a femoral artery with improvised equipment while the patient is going into hemorrhagic shock. I have, 27 times. So here's what's going to happen, Doctor. Reichert, you're going to step back, and I'm going to save that patient's life. Again. This is insane, Benny sputtered, looking around for support. She's not even credentialed at this hospital anymore. She has no surgical privileges. This is a gross violation of... One of the operators stepped forward, positioning himself between Benny and the trauma bay entrance. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Mr. Caldwell, Benny called out, his voice taking on a desperate edge. Tell them she can't do this. Caldwell, who'd followed them down from the roof, looked like a man watching his entire worldview collapse. The federal government has invoked emergency protocols. We're required to cooperate. Required to let some fired nurse play surgeon. Benny's voice was climbing into hysteria now. Some fired nurse, Hale said, his voice dropping into a register that made everyone in the ER straighten unconsciously. Who holds the Bronze Star with Valor, the Purple Heart, the Combat Medical Badge, and a field commission to captain for actions during the Karazi offensive. Captain Crook has saved more lives in active combat than you've seen in your entire career, Doctor. And right now, she's the only thing standing between your patient and death. So you can either assist her, or you can get the hell out of her way. But you will not interfere. Are we clear? The silence that followed was absolute. Anna didn't wait for Benny's response. She moved to the trauma bay, her eyes already assessing the patient. Male, early 20s, pale from blood loss, femoral artery spurting with each heartbeat despite the pressure bandages. The monitors showed blood pressure dropping, heart rate climbing. He was circling the drain. "Sophia," Anna said, her voice snapping the nurse into motion. "I need a vascular repair kit, 6 units of O-negative, and a makeshift surgical field. Now." "On it," Sophia responded, already moving. "James, prep the patient for emergency surgery. Full anesthesia protocol. Caroline, you're assisting on instruments." The nurses moved like they'd been waiting years for someone to actually take command. Benny stood frozen in the trauma bay doorway, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Anna scrubbed in at the sink, her movements automatic, practiced. Through the reflection in the window, she could see General Hale watching her with the assessment of someone who'd bet everything on a single asset. She could see the operators maintaining perimeter security. She could see hospital staff clustered at the windows, phones out, recording this impossible moment. And she could see Dr. Benny Reichert, his perfect white coat rumpled now, his composure shattered, watching her with the dawning realization that he'd fired a person he never truly understood. Anna pulled on surgical gloves with practiced snaps. "Dr. Reichert," she said without turning around, "you can observe if you want. You might learn something." She walked to the surgical field. The patient was prepped, anesthetized, draped. The exposed wound was ugly, a jagged tear where the motorcycle's foot peg had driven through flesh and muscle to nick the femoral artery. Benny had been right about one thing. This was a complicated repair. In a normal surgical suite, with proper equipment and time, it would be challenging, but manageable. Anna had approximately 8 minutes before the patient's blood pressure dropped to irreversible levels. "Scalpel," she said, and Caroline placed it in her hand with the precision of someone who finally had a surgeon worth following. Anna's hands moved with the kind of certainty that came from doing this when it mattered, when hesitation meant death, when the enemy was time and blood loss, and your own doubt. She cut away the damaged tissue, exposing the artery, assessing the injury with eyes that had learned to see in the worst conditions imaginable. "Clamp," she said, and it appeared. "Suture." It was there before she finished the word. She worked in silence, her focus absolute. The room faded away. The observers didn't matter. The politics didn't matter. There was only the patient, the injury, and the solution. This was what she was trained for. This was what she was built for. This was the truth of who Anna L. Crook really was. 6 minutes later, she tied off the final suture and stepped back. "Release the clamp." Sophia released it. Blood flowed through the repaired artery, smooth and strong. The monitors showed blood pressure stabilizing, heart rate normalizing. The patient's color began to improve, pink returning to replace the death gray. "He's stable," Caroline breathed, something like awe in her voice. Anna stripped off her gloves. "Keep him on broad-spectrum antibiotics. Monitor for compartment syndrome. He'll need follow-up in 48 hours, but he's going to make it." She turned to General Hale. "Sir, I'm ready for deployment." Hale nodded, something like pride in his expression. He pulled out his phone, stepped away. spoke quietly to someone on the other end. When he returned, his expression was satisfied. "The president's been briefed. You're cleared hot. We launch in 5 minutes." That's when Dr. Benny Reichert found his voice again. "This is unacceptable," he said. But the bluster was gone, replaced by something smaller, more desperate. "You can't just waltz back in here after being fired and humiliate me in front of my entire staff. I'm the head of surgery. You're a fraud," General Hale said flatly. The ER went silent again. Hale pulled out a tablet, tapped it, and turned it so everyone could see. Dr. Benjamin Reichert, applied to military medical service in 2012, was accepted into the Army's physician program, washed out after 6 months due to inability to perform under pressure. Clinical evaluations noted excessive ego defense mechanisms and fundamental unsuitability for high-stress medical environments. He looked up from the tablet. "You failed out of military medicine, doctor, and you've spent the last 12 years hiding that failure by crushing anyone who reminded you of it." Benny's face went white. That's confidential. You can't." "I can," Hale said. "And I did. Because when someone fires a decorated combat medic for being too competent, I get curious about why. Turns out you recognized Captain Crook's skills the moment she started working here. You knew she was military. You knew she was better than you. And you spent 7 years systematically undermining her to protect your own inadequate ego." "That's not I didn't." "You did," Sophia said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. She met Benny's eyes with 7 years of accumulated resentment. "We all knew. Every nurse in this ER knew you were taking credit for Anna's saves. We knew you were too insecure to handle anyone being better than you. We just couldn't say it because you'd destroy us the same way you tried to destroy her." "Sophia," Benny started. "She saved lives you would have lost," James added, stepping forward. "The boy with anaphylaxis, the woman with the nitro interaction, the dozens of other cases where she caught your mistakes and fixed them before anyone died. And you fired her for it." Benny looked around the room, searching for an ally, for anyone who would defend him. He found only the faces of people who'd watched him rule through fear and were discovering they didn't have to be afraid anymore. Administrator Caldwell cleared his throat. "Dr. Reichert, perhaps we should discuss this in my office." "Perhaps," General Hale said. "You should discuss how you allowed a vindictive, incompetent physician to fire a national asset out of petty ego. The Inspector General's office will be very interested in that conversation." Caldwell's face went grey. Hale turned to Anna. "Captain, I know this hospital owes you approximately 7 years of back gratitude, but we have a mission. Are you ready?" Anna looked around the ER one last time, at the nurses who'd become her colleagues and almost friends, at the patients who'd never known who really saved them, at Dr. Benny Reichert, who'd tried to make himself bigger by making her smaller and was now discovering the true dimensions of his own insignificance. "Sir," she said, "I was ready 7 years ago. I just forgot for a while. Then let's go save the president's son." Anna started toward the exit, then paused. She turned back to the room. "Sophia, you're the best triage nurse I've ever worked with. James, your IV placement skills could work in the dark. Caroline, you have instincts that most doctors would kill for." She looked at each of them. "Don't let anyone tell you you're just nurses. You're the ones who actually save lives." Sophia's eyes were bright with tears. "Go be amazing, Anna. We always knew you were." Anna nodded once, then turned and walked out of the ER. General Hale and the operators fell in beside her. Behind them, she could hear Caldwell beginning what was undoubtedly the most uncomfortable conversation of Benny Reichert's career. They reached the roof. The Black Hawk's rotors were already spinning up. As Anna moved toward the aircraft, Hale touched her arm. "Captain, before we deploy, I need to tell you something. The hospital board held an emergency meeting 15 minutes ago. They're offering you the Director of Trauma Surgery position. Full authority, triple your nursing salary, complete autonomy. They want you to restructure the entire department." Anna stopped, looking at him. "Sir?" They're terrified of the federal investigation that's about to land on them. They want to make things right, and they want you to be the face of that redemption. Hale's expression was neutral. "It's yours if you want it. You could have the career you deserve, the recognition, the respect, everything Riker took from you." Anna stood on the roof, the helicopter downwash pulling at her hair, and considered the offer. 7 years ago, she would have killed for this opportunity. To be recognized, to be valued, to have the authority to actually make a difference without someone like Benny Reichert standing in her way. But that was 7 years ago. "Sir," she said slowly, "I appreciate the offer, but I spent 7 years trying to be something I'm not, trying to be safe and small and civilian. And it turns out I'm terrible at it." She looked at the helicopter, at the operators waiting for her, at the mission that lay ahead. The president's son is bleeding out in a compound in Karazi province. There are soldiers in the field who need medics, who can work miracles with nothing. There's a war that doesn't stop just because I wanted to forget it existed. She met Hale's eyes. "I'm not a hospital administrator, General. I'm the ghost of the Frontline. And ghosts don't retire, they just wait for the next mission." Hale's expression shifted into something that might have been respect. "The Army will be lucky to have you back, Captain. The Army never lost me, sir. I just took a very long leave of absence." She climbed into the Black Hawk, strapped in, and didn't look back as the helicopter lifted off. Below, Harbor Ridge Medical Center fell away, shrinking into the landscape of her past. Somewhere in that building, Dr. Benny Reichert was learning what it felt like to have your entire world dismantled by someone you'd underestimated. Somewhere in that building, nurses were realizing they didn't have to accept being small anymore. And somewhere in the Karazi province, the president's son was holding on to life, waiting for a medic who'd learned a long time ago that the only thing worth being was the person who showed up when everyone else said it was impossible. The city disappeared behind them as the Black Hawk gained altitude, heading east toward the setting sun. General Hale handed Anna a full combat medical kit, watching as she checked the supplies with the automatic precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "Captain Crook," he said, over the helmet comms. "Welcome home." Anna looked out at the horizon, at the world spreading out below them, at the mission ahead. For the first time in 7 years, she felt the pieces of herself clicking back together. The nurse and the soldier, the healer and the warrior, the person who'd tried to hide and the ghost who'd never really left. "It's good to be back, sir," she said, and meant it. Behind them, the sun painted the sky in shades of fire and gold. Ahead, somewhere in the darkness gathering over the mountains, someone was waiting for a miracle. And Captain Anna L. Crook, the ghost of the Frontline, was on her way to deliver it. Because that's what ghosts do. They appeared when you needed them most. They saved you when everyone else had given up. And they reminded you that sometimes the people you dismiss are the ones who've been extraordinary all along, they just chose to be quiet about it, until the moment they chose not to be quiet anymore.